So, I wanted to just do a quick recap. We were talking about right speech last week and the week before last. And there was a quote from Buddha, or not sure if it was him now that I looked it up further, but someone wise in a long time ago said the wise ones fashioned speech with their thought, sifting it as the grain is sifted through a sieve. So being really careful when we're speaking or writing. And the Buddha taught this as a part of our ethical conduct. That is one of the foundations of this practice of meditation and mindfulness. Because if you're behaving with wonderful ethics, your conscience is clear, and then your mind is clear, your heart is clear, the regrets are fewer. So, and right speech, wise speech, is part of the Eightfold Noble Path, which we touched on, including things like right speech, right action, right effort, things like that. But right speech is one of my favorites because it's so easy to understand. I think it's not too complicated. And the Buddha defined right speech, this wise speech, as speech that gives rise to peace and happiness in oneself and in others. Speech that gives rise to peace and happiness in oneself and others. So then he, of course, lays out the plan, which is why I love his teachings so much. They're so practical. So on the ground, what can we do to speak wisely? And he had sort of a list of things to consider, but we boiled it down to the two rules, if you will. Is what you are about to say true and helpful? Is it true? Is it helpful? And if we can answer yes to both questions, not one, not the other, not that it's helpful but not actually true, or not that it's true but not actually helpful. If we can answer both of those in the affirmative, then we're clear for takeoff. We then went on to look at, so he listed for us the three classic hindrances to speaking wisely, the three things that get in the way. And last time we looked more in depth at false speech, like outright lying, but also exaggerating, or flattery. And we talked about how that's unhelpful. And then we also talked about gossip and slander, speaking ill of anyone, really, when they're not present, even people that are really difficult for us. And maybe we feel they really deserve to be spoken of in such a manner. But we talked about the pitfalls of that. We looked at flattery and when we're flattering someone, it's being complicit in the delusion, and it's agreeing with, you're not good enough as you are, so I too will tell these little white lies. So it seems like it's done with love, but in fact it's not alleviating suffering by not seeing clearly others and ourselves. And I saw, I was in the park yesterday taking a much needed walk, and I saw this tree from a distance. Beautiful. We have this beautiful park behind near our house, and there's this gorgeous maple tree. It's sort of the crowning view of the vista as you look across this beautiful field. And yesterday when I walked, there was a big baby blue heart painted on the side of the tree. Just gorgeous. Like somebody really wanted to express their love for this space and this tree. And I thought, oh, how beautiful. And I was walking past the tree on my journey, and as I got closer to the tree, my heart sank. The heart, a very big one, it took up the whole side of the tree, had actually been carved out of the skin of the bark. So there's a big hole in the bark, and then they had painted inside against the flesh of the tree. So if you're a tree hugger, as I am, you know that that's very dangerous and usually will kill the tree. And I just thought to myself, that is oftentimes what we do when there's so many times we do things out of love, what we think is love, without knowing that we actually are causing harm. And so the invitation is, especially in this practice that we do of mindfulness, is trying to look more deeply at every aspect of our lives and our inner lives and our outer lives, so that we can cause less harm as we walk through life, cause less harm in all these very subtle ways, all these very beautiful ways that we can look at. So the third hindrance that the Buddha put out to wise speech is what he coins harsh speech. The third hindrance to wise speech is harsh speech. And harsh speech is basically speaking aggressively. Or speaking passive-aggressively. So speaking from a place of anger or irritation. Like when you hear someone speak in anger, it's usually quite obvious. And so the enemy is clear. Not so obvious when there's irritation present and things come in from the side. When we're passive-aggressive and we're saying things because we're irritated. That's the same energy, and it causes pain in ourselves and in others, frankly. So this notion of harsh speech as something to be aware of in ourselves is very helpful. And I wanted to point out to a couple of examples of harsh speech. I think there's a few that I find surprising that aren't as obvious. So another form of harsh speech that isn't obvious is our need to be right. I first read about this in The Body Keeps the Score, an amazing book. And he defined it. He was listing various things that are violence on us. cause trauma to us, and this need to be right. And Basil van der Kolk was talking about, so in your own life and your upbringing, was there someone in your life who really needed to be right? I met a woman on a retreat one time, a young woman who was a heroin addict. And she was in a lot of pain and trying to heal and recover. Her mom was actually there at the retreat, although I didn't see her much. And one day we were in a sharing circle, and she shared that for her mom, it's more important for her to be right than to be happy. More important to be right than to be happy. And so she was never able to feel at rest, at ease with her mother, and she was deeply caught in the trap of addiction. Deeply caught. When people say, "Oh, you're right. Oh, you're right." You've said something, maybe it's a little controversial, and somebody says, "Yep, yeah, that's right." It feels like it's very sweet when someone can say that. You feel validated, you feel vindicated, you feel at ease. So remembering that and knowing what the opposite is, the need to argue and the need to be putting out our views as right, is not that same energy. It's the opposite energy. It's causing suffering. So this need to have the last word, this need to make a correction, just a little tweak or to improve on things. The reason why we do this is probably, the need to feel intelligent, the need to feel clever, or the need to be saying the truth, maybe the need to feel in control of things. Whatever those needs are, knowing the harm that's caused in that behavior may help us to let go of those drives in us. Remember, is it true and is it helpful when you're speaking? Is it true? Yeah, I know this. I know the gas tank is a third of the way, we're almost to empty. I know it. When you see another person stuck in a place and you keep arguing because you know you're right, then ask yourself, is this helpful right now? Is this helpful? Oh, maybe you're right. Okay. Maybe it's full. Okay. Can we go and look? Let's go and look. You might be right. You might be right. It's possible. Let's go and look. So another expression of verbal violence is sarcasm. It might not be obvious. It was never obvious to me. My own father was incredibly sarcastic. He was a great man, but this was his norm. His mom, too, very clever sarcast. And my dad started going to therapy in his 50s, thank God. And his therapist was very wise and got him on the path of recovery. My dad started to say he's a recovering sarcast, and he started to abstain from sarcasm. And it felt odd. I was like, gosh, your sarcasm is so funny. It's so clever and witty, and it makes you feel good. And over a couple of years, this shift happened where I started to feel much safer in conversation with my father, knowing that his wit wouldn't come in, and he wasn't too much hurting me, but he wouldn't be hurting with that. Yeah. There's a prayer that I love by Larry Yang that I'll share with you. It's a wonderful invitation. So, may I be loving, open, and aware in this moment. If I cannot be loving, open, and aware in this moment, may I be kind. If I cannot be kind, may I be non-judgmental. If I cannot be non-judgmental, may I not cause harm. If I cannot not cause harm, may I cause the least harm possible. May I cause the least harm possible. So we start with our intention at the top, and we forgive ourselves as we go down, because so many times it's accessible and so many times it's not accessible, our deepest intentions. So, and in this case, the intention is cause no harm, because to be happy, you have to cause no harm. When we cause harm to others, we harm ourselves. It often feels like we can protect ourselves by hurting the other person, but it's not the case. And the Buddhist perspective on that has to do with the 3 marks of existence. And the 3 marks of existence are the unsatisfactory nature of much of life, number 1. Number 2, the impermanence of life. And number 3, non-self as a concept, meaning that we're all so intimately interwoven with each other. We have a false idea that we're this separate self, that we can exist without the help of others, without like, for example, it's such a hard notion to grasp for me sometimes, but sometimes when I think about it in terms of, like, for example, we can't have the oatmeal for breakfast without the truck driver from, say, Texas, who maybe, loves to carry guns in his truck. He drove it all the way up from there to our store. And so I can't have my nourishing breakfast without him. Or my car had a broken part and sent it to the shop, and they're waiting for the piece to come in. Without the help of the people in that manufacturing plant that's in a place that has very discordant political views from my own, and yet I rely on them so much so that the part can get in my car and I can go and do my grocery shopping. Even the air that we breathe is coming into our body and leaving, and it's going inside and outside of the bodies of everyone on the planet, of every animal. Even the plants are using those same molecules as we are to be alive. So it's a delusion to think that we're separate and that by hurting another, we're helping ourselves. It's a delusion. So, wise intention is the way to wise speech. So when it's in your capacity, when it's in our capacity, what is my intention? Is it to raise myself up a little bit above the other, or is it to be right? Is it to belittle someone, or is it to protect myself? Just knowing what the intention is, just knowing that. And moving towards, is it true and is it helpful? And a lot of times it's very complicated, right? A lot of times it's true and it's helpful for me, and maybe my needs are more important right now. My self-care is paramount. And that's okay. It's not a perfectionist practice, it's awareness practice. But knowing the intention is paramount. So, how to do that, right? Because usually we're on the treadmill, or we're in the car and it's going fast. So how do we get that pause so that we can reflect and ask, well, what is my intention right now? How do we get that sacred pause for ourselves? As mindfulness practitioners, you have a way to work with, in this case, this harsh speech case, your anger and irritation. You have a way to work with it. Because we spend our time practicing coming back to our body, coming back to our 5 senses, for example, and in this case, coming back to our body. So when we know we're upset, or know we're irritated, we know we feel bad about something, can you feel it in your body? Maybe not. That's okay. But always have that investigation. Can you sense this burning in your chest, or a tightness in the shoulders, or some tightening in the body? Investigating that and trying to find out what's going on here. And if you notice that you're angry, ceasing from judging. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, this is true. And as soon as you can hold that, feel that, know that, acknowledge that, not be judgmental about that, then it loosens its control of you, and you have more volition to do what you want to do, to say what you want to say. I'll just say that this is a practice. This mindful speech is a practice. And, sometimes you bring awareness to what you say before you say it. There are those wonderful occasions. Sometimes you become aware of what you're saying and your intentions as you're saying it. At which point you might feel like you've really messed everything up, maybe, and it's too late, but that's not true. The awareness is power. The awareness is like your superpower. It's okay if you're in the middle of it and you realize it, that's a gift. And then, of course, there's plenty of times when you'll become aware of things after they happen. And that is equally powerful awareness. Wherever the awareness comes, accept it. Accept it. Because if you have awareness and then you beat yourself up over it, you probably are going to not build that habit of having awareness. So the trick is to, when the awareness comes, is to be non-judgmental. So, yeah, so that's the third aspect to think about with wise speech, right speech, mindful speech. So again, just having the intention to speak what is true and helpful. To have the ingredients. Silence is a beautiful option if the ingredients aren't there.